Hello there. Welcome back to the Codex. So he is finally here. One of my favorite frames in the entire game, especially for the kind of missions that I like running, endurance missions, endurance survivals specifically. Xaku Prime is here. The skeleton boy himself is here. Let me show some respect to him, actually. The skeleton man is here. The skeleton gentleman. He also brought with him the Trumna Prime and the Quasis Prime, although I'll probably be discussing those in a separate video. This is dedicated just to Xaku here. Let's take a look at the build that I have thrown on him. First of all, let's start off with the Archon Shards. It's 4 Tau-Forged Crimsons and 1 Tau-Forged Amber. 3 of the Crimsons are for ability duration, so that's 45% duration, which is a critical stat on Xaku, and 1 of them is Strength. Then the 1 Amber is a 37.5% casting speed bonus, which just makes him feel a little bit smoother to use. It's primarily for the spam ability of the Helmuth ability that I've replaced this 1 with, which is Resonator, for if you ever need to use that for shield gaining purposes. And it makes the Vast Untime be able to get repopped a little faster there, so it's just a little convenient. Now, if you look at the build here, you can see it's largely range-focused, with a very chunky amount of duration still, primarily thanks to those shards. Without the shards, you would only be sitting at 155 duration, because the only actual duration mod we have on is Prime Continuity. And going from 155 to 200 duration is a, it's just an insanely enormous buff on this build. Like, I have a hard time even describing how good that amount of extra duration is on him, because his 4th ability snapshots the duration of his first 3 abilities. Now, not his first ability in this case, because I replaced it with Resonator, which does not count for this. So for this build, just the Grasp of Loke and the Lost, primarily the Gaze version of the Lost, they get their duration paused while the Vast Untime is active. So getting that extra duration from the Crimson Shards means that the duration of these abilities themselves is higher, and then the duration of the ability that pauses these timers is higher. So you're basically double dipping that bonus to duration by, again, you're making the duration of these themselves longer, so that even just in, like if it's 60 seconds, if you went from, say, 50 to 60 seconds, you would get 10 more seconds. But if you have 10 or 15-ish more seconds, but then you're pausing that timer with this for another extra 10-15 seconds, that adds up to, I actually did the math, and it's like 10 plus minutes of extra time, because every time that you pop the Vast Untime, you only lose like 0.4 seconds of this. So adding 10, 15, 20 seconds to this, if you divide that out by 0.4 and then multiply that segment count basically by the total duration of these, then you essentially do the math for how many extra minutes you end up getting for this. Sorry if that was all really confusing. Basically, these last a shitload longer by adding that amount of extra duration, which is also why we're using the Grimoire, if you want to, with the Wrist Invocation, for another 60% duration, because again, if you get this 60% duration bonus, and then you cast his 2 and his 3, and then you keep snapshotting it over and over and over again, and have them be super slowly decaying, because you keep your 4 up constantly, then again, you get to keep those bonuses for super long. The main reason why that's really important, aside from just convenience of not having to recast, is it gets even further enhanced if you go into a Fisher mission where you get corrupted, because then you can keep that double strength and double power bonus, double strength and double range bonus, rather, snapshotted for a dramatically longer amount of time. Now, going over the actual mods here, like I said, mostly range. So we have Overextended, Augur Reach, and Archon Stretch. The only reason I have Archon Stretch on here instead of regular Stretch is in case you ever use a Sentinel that via Manifold Bond procs an ability that deals electric damage, because you have electric modded onto the weapon, which then carries over to a damaging ability via Manifold Bond. That counts as being an ability that deals electricity damage. It doesn't have to be a Warframe ability. In today's build, I'm actually not using a Sentinel that does that, because we're using Nautilus, and Nautilus doesn't have any damaging precept effects. But if you were using something else, then just keep in mind that this can give you a little bit of extra energy if you are switching up your Sentinel choice. So range is super important on this because not only does range, of course, affect the range of your abilities, as you would expect, but it also affects the amount of guns that you get from Grasp of Loke. So it's a direct actual damage increase along with power strength. So essentially power strength is the amount of damage that each gun does, but you get more total guns from range. The other primarily useful thing about range is that it increases the radius of your armor strip from gaze. Now, speaking of gaze, since we have that one strength shard on, once we have Molt Augmented totally stacked up, we will exceed 200% strength, and 200% strength is an important threshold because that's the amount of strength that you need to hit that 100% armor strip on this build, so that's why I have that one strength shard on. And then aside from that, we have Rolling Guard, Prime Flow, and Equilibrium. So Rolling Guard is this extra survivability, of course, on top of shield gating and some other mechanics that we'll see here, like Aegis and whatnot. And then a flow and Equilibrium combined with the Synth Deconstruct on our companion will give you absolutely infinite energy. This build can actually fit with, as like the 90% of this build can fit with just 2 Forma. If you aren't using Prime Sure-Footed, you're using regular Stretch, and you don't care about Brief Respite, if you just use the default Nairmon polarity, I think the rest of this build fits with just 2 Forma. Otherwise, it's 3 or 4, depending on, like I said, using regular Stretch over Archon and things like that. But this version of the build uses 5. It's a more full investment build that allows you to utilize a range of options, basically, like I said, especially when it comes to swapping out your companion. Speaking of the companion, we're using Nautilus. This is the main Nautilus build itself. Synth Deconstruct is a really important factor on here. This will make it so that all the enemies that your Nautilus harms will have a chance to drop a health orb, and this is why Equilibrium will give you an insane amount of energy. Accelerated Deflection just helps it stay alive, basically just helps it get those shields back faster to keep up its own shield gate. Of course, you have the basically default slots of Primed Regen, Primed Animal Instinct, and Vacuum. I am using Duplex Bond. Now, since my Xaku build has negative efficiency, this will go off all the time, basically, because all of my abilities cost way more than they usually do, especially the 4th ability costs 155, so a single cast of that will trigger this. So basically, every time that you're repopping your 4th to keep pausing the duration of your 2 and your 3, you'll be sending out another Nautilus clone. Now, I do know that because I'm sending out clones and they attack by default, people are going to say that I don't need to use Assault Mode, because if you don't use Assault Mode, the real Sentinel won't attack, but the clones will. I still like to have my actual Nautilus attack. I think it helps the consistency of Synth Deconstruct, for example, and ceasing enemies around you and all that, especially because the clones, they very often travel off into the distance, whereas my Sentinel is always on me, so if I get crowded, I want the Assault Mode on so that my Sentinel is hitting the enemies that are directly on me rather than 30 meters away. And then Cordon will constantly group up enemies for you. Speaking of enemies being near me, this is fantastic for just grouping and increasing your KPM, essentially. And then we have Guardian on, which will go off fairly consistently, thanks to Manifold Bond, because it has a 30-second cooldown, but it is reduced by Manifold Bond, so you will very often get your shields restored, which again will aid in that shield gating survivability. Now for the weapon build, I decided to use the Artax instead of the Verglass, because the Artax keeps 20% of its damage as cold damage, so no matter what you mod it for, it always has cold, so it can make easy use of Shivering Contagion, so it's really interesting. And then I put on Radiation. It has, overall, it has Electricity, Viral, Cold, Radiation. Now, the Electricity here would be a lot more useful if it was on a Sentinel, like I said, that could actually trigger Archon Stretch. So if you want to, you can actually swap this out for Heat. Doesn't really make a difference, honestly. It would make a lot more difference using Heat if you didn't already have an armor strip. I will say that. So, like I said, it really doesn't matter. This is basically just going to keep our Manifold Bond up. All right, let's go ahead and hop into Survival. I'm going to first get like 10, 15, close to maybe 20 minutes into there, and then I will bring you guys in and we can see where we are in the mission. So I'll see you in a sec. All right, here we are in the Survival. Been here for about nearly 20 minutes so far, and it's been essentially a complete breeze. We're at the 17-minute mark almost, and we're at over 1,800 kills. basically without even thinking about it. So that's over 100 kpm incredibly easily, especially when you get a good room like this. This is actually my favorite room to camp in on this survival in particular. The Resonator, I can't speak today, ability is putting in a lot of work. Does a great job keeping you alive. You have the CC from Resonator. Enemies focus on that. Basically, every enemy that's not an Xmas focuses on that. And then you have Nautilus grouping enemies for you. You have Nautilus using its Vertilast to freeze enemies for you. You have the shield regen from the Guardian mod. You have the evasion, where a lot of enemies just won't hit you in the first place from his 4th ability, this 75% dodge chance. And of course, the best defense in Warframe, you just kill everything before they can kill you. That's my favorite. Let me put my guns back on here. I am using the Trumna Prime right now, by the way. This video isn't really about that. I know that also came out with the Xaku Prime Access, but I think I'm probably going to do a separate video for the Trumna just in case. I need to cover a couple different build aspects for it that I don't want to really shove into a Xaku video here. So we'll just focus on Xaku for now. But yeah, there's a reason why Xaku is one of my favorite frames in the game. Maybe my second favorite frame, since I called Gyre my favorite frame, and Xaku is essentially the female version of Gyre. Who knows? But, yeah, as long as you keep, you know, activating your rolling guard when you need to, keep your Resonator up, keep killing everything around you, you're really not going to have any issues surviving. And you're definitely not going to have any issues killing the Acolyte. Because his, the void damage that he does, all void damage resets the damage resistances of Acolytes. So whenever an Acolyte spawns in, you'll constantly be doing full damage to them with your second ability, because every single hit is going to reset that resistance, just like when the Stalker spawns in, for example, and he adapts to your damage. You can pop into your Operator, shoot him with your amp, and it resets it. It's the same mechanic, essentially. So not an issue whatsoever. Now, like I mentioned before, I do have the 2 Augur mods on my Grimoire, plus I have Brief Respite on my Xaku, so I get a nice amount of shield gating, which is another reason why Resonator is handy. Resonator, along with the crowd control that it offers from the effect of the ability itself, is also a very spammable ability. And with the negative duration we have, sorry, not negative duration, negative efficiency we have, thanks to Blind Rage, it makes it a good panic button. With the somewhat low amount of shields he has, you can basically just double tap Resonator like I just did there and instantly get your full shields back, and even go a little bit into overshields. So if you need to use it that way, it's no problem, and the energy economy of doing so is not going to be an issue at all, because you get so much energy back from Equilibrium. And here comes an Acolyte. Just to give a little Trumna teaser, maybe I'll store up a charge shot here and activate that on him. Unless these enemies feel like, you know, not let me do that. Well, I guess he's just gonna die from Xaku. Yeah, see, I didn't shoot him a single time, and he just got completely evaporated by the second ability. That is pretty much what Xaku does to every Acolyte every single time he spawns in. And this isn't even a Fissure mission, so keep in mind how dramatically stronger Xaku can be if you go into a Fissure, where you can get corrupted with that double range and double power strength. That double range primarily is disgusting, because it'll double the radius of your armor ship from gaze, and it will double the amount of guns you have from his second ability. So not only will it double their damage, but the amount of guns you have scales with ability range. So doubling that means you go from 15 to like 31, 32 guns. Which is, of course, a absolutely insane damage increase. If you think about it, doubling your guns because of range, and then doubling their damage because of doubling the strength, means that you're overall quadrupling the damage output of that ability. So yeah, quite good when you take him to a Fissure. That's about it for this video. I just wanted to showcase how amazing Xaku is. Just like the previous video I made on him months ago, he's still incredible. He's even better now that the Prime is out, especially because the Prime is, for a lot of people, more easily accessible, since you just have to get him through relics rather than doing the Deimos bounties, which, for one reason or another, people don't seem to like doing. I don't know. But anyways, he's here. He's amazing. He's the skeleton man. Go get him. Highly recommend. And yeah, that's about it. I'll see you guys in the next one.